if we're going to attack Beijing tomorrow, all right? You're up for it too? All right, hold on. So listen, if we're going to attack Beijing tomorrow, how many men do you think we need? 10,000, 100,000, a million? What if I tell you just one skilled Chinese soldier, one you know what I'm saying? One man, one rifle, a city on lockdown, and the truth the government tried to bury. Today we'll talk about the resistance of China's strongest soldier. Of course, to say he is strong is not to praise his extreme behavior, but he really possesses superb military qualities and tactical awareness. In order to subdue him, the Beijing authorities deployed 1,000 military police. He used the traffic barrier as cover and fought for hours against the thousands of soldiers and police. 75 people were killed or wounded, most of them soldiers, while he remained unharmed. Some people even exaggerated by saying that he is the Chinese version of John Wick. During the gunfight, he changed the magazines with one hand in a remarkably smooth maneuver that was captured on camera by Canadian news crew. The footage later caught the attention of special forces units in various countries who even began to study and emulate the technique. Yeah. On September 20th, 1994, Beijing witnessed a violent standoff unlike anything else in recent history. The authorities quickly dispatched hundreds of armed police to the scene. A soldier armed with a Type 81 assault rifle had taken position in the grass beside a straight divider, using the metal guardrail as cover. He shifted between lying prone and crouching, firing controlled bursts with deadly precision. As one police officer cautiously tried to assess the situation, he was immediately shot through the helmet the moment he raised his head. Several armed officers who engaged him were quickly shot, some killed, others wounded. Their injuries left the remaining hundreds of police and military personnel paralyzed, unable to get close. It became clear this was no ordinary attacker. This was a highly trained marksman with sharp tactical awareness and combat instincts that overwhelmed even the most prepared response teams. His name was Tian Mingjian. Tian was the first lieutenant in the Chinese army and had even once earned second place in his regiment's military skills competition. So what could drive such an outstanding officer to commit such a shocking act? The night before the incident, Tian borrowed a key to the army's armory. From there, he retrieved a Type 81 assault rifle along with 6 fully loaded magazines. The rifle was China's domestically produced version of the Russian AK-47, with each magazine holding 30 rounds. Tian concealed the weapon and ammunition under a chair near the unit's inspection table. Then he quietly spoke with a few of his close comrades, telling them during tomorrow's drill, "When I shout, lie down, you must drop to the ground immediately." His comrades, unaware of his intentions, were confused. Some thought he was joking, not realizing that Tian was about to carry out a deadly plan. The next morning, during a routine inspection by regimental leaders and political commissars, Tian pulled out the rifle he had hidden the night before, shouting "lie down" as he had warned his comrades. He opened fire on the parade ground. 4 senior officers, including regimental commanders and political commissars, were killed on the spot. More than 10 others were wounded. After the shooting, Tian hijacked the military jeep and forced the driver to take him toward Tiananmen Square. The unit's leadership immediately gave the order to pursue him. However, according to reports, the troops had just been issued new rifles, which needed to be unboxed, cleaned, and oiled before use. Combined with the time required to mobilize the soldiers, this delay allowed Tian to escape. By the time the troops were finally ready, Tian had already driven from Tiananmen to Jianguomen, where he engaged in a gun battle with local police and armed forces. This is the exact moment you saw at the beginning of the video. Notably, Jianguomen lies within Beijing's foreign embassy district. Some believe Tian deliberately chose this area to draw maximum international attention to his actions, which we'll talk about a bit later. At the moment, the gunfight was taking place right below the Canadian embassy building in Beijing. Canadian media quickly began a live broadcast from the scene, capturing what would have been unprecedented footage. But Chinese authorities reacted immediately. They shut down the satellite feed and issued an emergency ban on all media coverage only Xinhua News Agency was permitted to publish a brief 100-word report which appeared in that night's edition of the Beijing Daily. In a time before the internet, the rarity and shock of the story caused the newspaper to be resold on the streets for 50 times its normal price. So the question remains, why did the soldier commit such a shocking act? According to the official explanation, Tian was said to have a violent personality. He allegedly had a history of verbally abusing soldiers, and after being exposed for offering gifts to his superiors in hopes of promotion, he felt his future was ruined and snapped. But anyone who has served in the military might recognize how flimsy that excuse sounds. While regulations may forbid verbal abuse of soldiers, in practice, harsh discipline and shouting are almost a routine in many units, right? Some critics went as far as to say that the government's explanation was not just unconvincing, it was an insult to the public's intelligence. There's another reason behind this tragedy, one that Chinese officials have consistently avoided mentioning, but one that deserves far more of our attention. Tian was born in rural Henan province, where a deep-rooted cultural preference for sons over daughters has existed for generations. His wife's first child was a daughter. Determined to have a son, the couple decided to risk violating China's strict one-child policy. Word got back to Tian's military superiors. They reported the violation to the local family planning office, which promptly took action. Officials came to Tian's home and took his wife away by force. She was 7 months pregnant at the time. They brought her to a rural hospital where doctors performed a forced abortion. Later, Tian learned the unborn baby was a boy. Even worse, the procedure went wrong. His wife suffered severe bleeding and died shortly after. In a single horrific day, Tian lost both his unborn son and his wife, not due to an accident, but as a direct result of government policy and institutional cruelty. The emotional devastation combined with the betrayal he felt toward the army leadership who reported him and the anger at a system that robbed him of his family pushed him to a breaking point. This explanation, not the sanitized government narrative, offers a far more human and convincing reason for why Tian did what he did. Imagine getting a call from home and hearing that your pregnant wife had been forced into an abortion, that the child she was carrying, a boy, was gone, that she was gone too. It's not hard to understand the rage and devastation Tian must have felt in that moment. Now let's return to the scene. By this point, the gunfight had dragged on for several hours. Tian had exhausted all 6 of his magazines, 180 rounds in total. Finally, a sniper from the Red Army managed to circle around and took him out from a rooftop behind. The standoff was over, but it came at a high cost. More than 70 people were killed or wounded, and countless families were left shattered. What's even more tragic is that the entire incident sparkled no serious public reflection, and yet the root cause of this tragedy, the one-child policy and the machinery behind it, had already left behind a trail of suffering. Tian's story was not an isolated case. In 1991, 2 counties in Shandong province, Guangxian and Xinxian, were flagged by the central government for poor enforcement of family planning. Local leaders, desperate to meet quotas, launched what became known as the 100 Days No Birth campaign. During those 100 days, no babies were allowed to be born, regardless of whether the pregnancy was legal or not. Pregnant women were arrested, dragged to hospitals, and forced to undergo labor-inducing procedures. Some were already 9 or 10 months along, and some babies, horrifyingly, were reportedly killed after birth. Stories like this never made national headlines, and even today, independent media struggle to obtain any real information from within the military or government. Even if Tian left a suicide note explaining everything he felt, it would likely never be released. Even if he told his comrades the truth, they'd be ordered to stay silent to maintain harmony. So the full truth behind Tian's actions, we may never know. And maybe that's exactly why he chose Jianguomen Embassy District as the place to make his final stand, because only there, in front of foreign eyes, did he stand a chance of making the world notice. Sadly, an Iranian diplomat and his 10-year-old son were caught in the crossfire and killed. turning the tragedy into an international incident. But here's the question. If this had happened in a remote village in Henan, would anyone have heard about it at all? Would the government have needed to cut off satellite signals? Or would they have buried it completely? We'll never know.